Hey everyone, this is a video that I had originally made for Mental Health Awareness Month, which was in May. And some of you might remember that I asked you guys to submit questions, and I collected these questions on Instagram and on YouTube and then brought them to mental health expert Lori Gottlieb. My intention for this video was to bring you advice from a true expert. Lori is not only a psychotherapist, she is also a New York Times bestselling author, a nationally recognized journalist, and weekly Dear Therapist columnist for The Atlantic. Our conversation was about mental health as it relates to COVID-19, but it doesn't address the crisis of police brutality, racism, and white supremacy in America. And so I wanted to address that now. White supremacy permeates every single aspect of our culture, our society, our organizations, our medical systems, our individual lives. And this is because it is the dominant force in our culture, because it is seen as the default norm. And it touches every single one of us in overt and covert ways. And that is the really insidious nature of white supremacy. It is everywhere. As a thin, biracial, queer, cisgender woman who has benefited from white passing privilege socially, professionally, economically, and medically, I am doing the work to educate myself so I can show up and be actively anti-racist. I'm taking steps off of social media and doing the work that doesn't end just when the social media coverage does. And this is so important because this is the work that we need to be doing as non-Black people. This is a lifelong commitment. It is not a fad or a trend to just jump on board with for a temporary period of time. It is our job to do this for ourselves in the present and for future generations. I know many of you watching this are multiracial and or Asian like I am, and a big part of the work that I have been doing is learning about anti-Black racism within Asian communities. White supremacy needs a racial hierarchy in order to survive, and so it creates wedges between marginalized communities. But the reality is, the truth is, that our liberation is inextricably tied to the liberation of Black people. And that is why it is our duty, our responsibility to show up and do this work. If you are joining me in this work, I'm going to be sharing links down below to resources that have been essential for me. Something that I have really grounded myself in is this question: what are you risking today? Because if we're not risking anything in this work, whether it's our comfort, our relationships with other people, maybe it's even the risk of our health or our lives to go outside in the middle of a pandemic and protest, if we're not risking anything, then nothing is truly changing. And so that's what I'm asking myself in this work. What am I risking today? Since this is a video about mental health, I want to direct you to the Loveland Foundation's Therapy Fund for Black Women and Girls, which provides financial assistance for Black women and girls who are seeking therapy. They partner with Therapy for Black Girls, National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network, Open Path Collective, and Talkspace. I will share a link down below where you can donate to the Loveland Foundation and also apply for financial assistance. So before we get into the conversation with Lori Gottlieb, I want to let you know that while Lori is an expert, her advice in this video does not constitute therapy or an evaluation. So with that being said, here's Lori. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for being here today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So I feel like definitely as quarantine has begun, I have noticed that my self-esteem has been much lower than usual. And based off of all of the questions that I received, this seems to be a really common trend. So I'm wondering, how can we navigate this like seemingly endless loop of negative self-talk when we're already feeling low?
Yeah. I think it's a really good time to notice how we talk to ourselves, because even in normal times, we can be so unkind to ourselves. And I think people don't realize that. Whenever I give talks, I usually say to people, who's the person that you talk to most in the course of your life? And most people think it's their partner or their parent or their child or their best friend or their sister or whatever it is. And it's ourselves, right? We talk to ourselves more than we're going to talk to any other person. But most of what we say to ourselves is not kind or true or helpful. And so I had a patient who really thought she wasn't self-critical. And I said, I want you to write down everything that you say to yourself in the course of a few days and then come back and tell me about it. And she came back and she said, oh my God, I am such a bully to myself. And just things like, oh, you made that mistake, you're so stupid, which we would never say to a friend, because not only or it's not like we're trying to be nice. It's like we wouldn't think that our friend was stupid for making that mistake. And so, we'll be like, oh, I look terrible. Or, if you just hear the litany of things that we say to ourselves. So I think right now, during the coronavirus, we're hearing that voice more. And I think we need to make sure that we have control over what that voice says to us. We don't have to have a bully in our head. So it's kind of like if you're listening to a radio station that you don't want to listen to, switch the dial, like go to the kind radio station.
Yeah, I feel like the more that I've caught myself with the bully inside of me, it's been a little bit easier to just notice it first and then change it later, change that channel.
Right, exactly. And I think part of it is, human beings are ridiculous. And I say that with the utmost compassion, that sometimes we take ourselves so seriously that we start to beat ourselves up, instead of saying, oh, wow, that's really funny that this happened. Or, give yourself space to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I noticed in the questions from people is this heightened state of anxiety, and people are even having panic attacks and they're feeling it physically in their bodies, whether it's through heart palpitations. I know I've definitely experienced this, just sitting on the couch and then all of a sudden feeling like I'm in danger. So, what are some options that people have in terms of managing this?
I would say two things. First of all, I think that we always think of anxiety as a negative feeling, and there's no negative or positive to our feelings. And sometimes anxiety can be helpful. So there's two kinds of anxiety. There's productive anxiety and unproductive anxiety. Productive anxiety is when you're reasonably worried about something and it motivates you to do something healthy. So we're reasonably worried about the spread of the coronavirus, so we're social distancing, we're wearing masks, we're doing what we need to do. That's productive. Unproductive anxiety, on the other hand, is what a lot of us are doing, which is kind of obsessive rumination, futurizing, catastrophizing about things that haven't happened yet and may never happen. So it's very hard for people, I think, when they don't know what's going to happen, not to fill in the story with something scary or negative. And people need to watch out for that, to stay grounded in the present, right now, right here, as opposed to what's going to happen next week or next month or next year, because that's not productive in any way. It's not helpful to them. What's helpful is, what can I do right now that is going to be helpful? And the second part of that, which relates to this, is seeing the both and of a situation. So for example, right now, a lot of people feel like, well, if I'm enjoying reading a book, or I'm enjoying talking to my friend because I have more time to do that, then, you can't really feel joy in a time when so much trauma is happening. And you can. It's both and. They're both true parts of the human experience. So we can be worried about what's going on. We can be grieving and sad when we're grieving the loss of maybe a job or our health, or even, a lot of people have experienced the death of a loved one right now. And at the same time, you don't have to feel guilty about saying, you know what, I like not having a commute to work right now. That's okay. It's both and. And so I feel like there's no hierarchy of grief, where some people say like, well, if it's not loss of life, loss of health, or loss of a job, then I can't feel any loss. You absolutely can feel loss. You can, everybody has lost so much, and you don't have, it's not the grief Olympics. You don't have to compare your grief to somebody else's. Your loss is real. And if you don't feel it, it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like I've definitely grieved multiple things just in the last couple of months. And sometimes it's something really small and sometimes it's something much larger, but it all feels really similar. It's kind of like the same feelings.
Right, right. And we need to feel our feelings because our feelings are useful. So many people, if they don't feel their feelings, they end up coming out in other ways. If you try to suppress your feelings, they get bigger. And so it comes out with like eating too much, drinking too much wine, spending too much time on the internet, which a colleague of mine says about the internet. She says it's the most effective short-term non-prescription painkiller out there. Right? We all do that. We spend a lot of time on the internet because we don't want to feel something. So it's easier to just keep mindlessly sort of scrolling. And so it'll come out in a short-temperedness. It'll come out, you get in a fight with your friend, whatever it is. It will come out. It's so much better to feel what you're feeling and sit with that feeling. So a lot of us are talking so much about isolation, for example, right? We're not actually isolated. We have to be physically distanced, but we can connect with anyone anytime. What people are not getting enough of in a weird way is privacy, meaning like maybe they're living with roommates or maybe they're living with a partner or whatever it is, and they don't get enough time to actually feel their experience because so much is going on around them. So it's really important to make sure that you don't shy away from your feelings, because our feelings are like a compass. They tell us what we need. If you're feeling sad, what does that tell you that you need more of right now or less of right now, right?
Mhm.
If you're feeling angry, what is not working for you right now? If you don't pay attention to your feelings, it's like walking around with a glitchy GPS. You don't know what direction to go in.
Yeah. And for people who are feeling lonely right now, because we definitely had people asking about that, how can they navigate the feeling of loneliness? They might be alone for an indefinite period of time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's really hard. And I think just to acknowledge that this is not, humans were not meant to be alone in this way. But again, I think the words that we use, we're not in solitary confinement, even though it might feel like it. We can connect with people in other ways. And I think the other thing that's really funny is that I see both couples and individuals in my therapy practice. And I will tell you that the people in couples are saying, God, I just want to talk to somebody else. I'm so sick of this person. I love this person that I'm with, but I'm so sick of this person. The same anecdotes, the same jokes, the same quirky habits. I really need to talk to somebody else. And the people who are living alone, who are single, will say something like, oh yeah, I don't want to talk to my friends with, partners or kids because they have so much on their plates and I don't want to be a burden to them and they don't probably have time to talk to me. Let me tell you, this is like a PSA to people out there, to single people out there. Please call the people who are in couples. They are dying to talk to you. They want to hear about what you're doing. What show are you binge watching? What are you reading? What are you cooking? What's going on with your job? Are you online dating during this time? Are you doing virtual dates? Like, they want to hear about your life. That's so much more interesting to them than what's going on in their own households right now. So
Yeah.
I really encourage people not to hesitate about reaching out when you're feeling lonely.
It does feel like a special time to be bonding with people in new and different ways too.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that people are having the kinds of conversations that they wish they had time to have when, when the hustle and bustle of daily life doesn't allow it. And so I think one of the silver linings here is that people are saying, not only do I have time for these conversations, but who matters to me? And, are there people in my life that maybe, I was spending time on that I didn't need to spend time on? And are there people that I wasn't spending enough time on that I really, that really nourish me, that I get a lot out of? And I want to really focus on those friendships.
So many of us have transitioned from working somewhere else to now working at home and just doing everything at home. Do you have any tips for how to separate from the work day and your personal time? Because this was something that people wrote in a lot about, just finding that separation between work life and personal life when you're doing everything in the same space.
Yeah, it's really important to delineate, what is work, and then to have time for yourself when you're not on at work. So I have this hybrid career where I'm a therapist and I have an office that I normally go to. Right now I'm doing all remote sessions, but normally I know what it's like to go to an office and have that delineation, that separation. But I'm also a writer. And so I'm really used to not having that separation, where I know that you have to make your own boundaries and you have to create your own structure. And so I think that a lot of what I do as a writer is what I'm helping people to do now that they're working from home, which is, I think people feel this pressure of, oh, an email came in at, 8 o'clock at night and I'm going to have to answer it right now. And the way that you respond to this signals to people what your availability is. So if you have boundaries around, during the day I'm available, but I'm also going to eat lunch because I need to eat lunch. And I'm not going to be answering emails while I eat lunch because I'm actually going to lunch in my kitchen. But I'm going to lunch, right? And I'm not going to have the phone with me so that I can just be answering everything that needs to get answered. And so you have your boundaries, and nothing is that urgent. I mean, if something's urgent, you'll really know about it. But for most of what we're doing, it can wait an hour or it can wait till the next morning. And so I think feeling that pressure of, I have to answer these emails before the morning, you actually don't. And so I think it's really important that we have some downtime while we're going through this, that we're all going through this shared experience, but everybody's going through it individually as well. And so what do you need to take care of yourself? Because if you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to do your job well. You're just going to burn out, and it's not going to be healthy. And I think what I really want people to do during this time is not only do what they can do now that's healthy, but I want them to kind of get in the mindset and get some habits set up that they can take with them as we start to emerge from this. Because you're going to need that, after this too, where what does it mean to say to people, you know what, I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. That's okay.
Yeah, I've been doing the lunch break routine where I'm not on my laptop or on my phone, and I just actually eat lunch with nothing else going on. And it makes such a huge difference just to have that little break within the day.
Right. I've seen people, when people are out for walks, they're walking around with their phones, like they're doing things. It's not like it looks like they're in the middle of work while they're walking. If you're going out for a walk, go out for a walk for half an hour and then come back. You'll feel so much more productive when you come back and you're refreshed in that way.
We've been talking a lot about how to take care of ourselves, but we did receive questions about, people wanting to know how they can support either a friend or a partner's mental health while also still taking care of their own. And one viewer in particular wrote in about her husband being in the healthcare industry, and she's wanting to know how she can be supportive.
I think the way that we can be supportive to anyone, including people who are really on the front lines like her husband, is to ask them about their experience. So many times we try to talk people out of their experience because we want to make them feel better. So if someone says, I'm really suffering, we say, well, look at this, and it's going to get better this way. And we try to cheer them up instead of saying, yeah, that's really hard. I think what people really want is they want to feel seen and heard and understood. So they want, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, not I can fix this for you. And so I think there's that pressure, especially when it's your husband and you see that he's really struggling maybe, to try to make things better for him, but really just being curious about his experience and asking him questions and what do you need or how can I help is better than giving them suggestions that might not be really relevant or helpful to them.
Yeah, and just acknowledging that what's happening is hard.
Yes. I think we do this with our kids too. I see this a lot with people who have young kids, and, their kids will say, I'm sad, I can't see my friends. And then the parent says, oh, look, let's go have some ice cream, as opposed to, yeah, it sucks that you can't see your friends right now.
Yeah.
Right. That's all they need is, yeah, it's really hard. And if you then just stop talking, and we can do this with our partners too. We talk too much. When I was training to become a therapist, one of my mentors said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. There's a reason for that ratio. Right. So I think that listening is a skill, and listening isn't just hearing the words that people are saying. I always like to say that as a therapist, I'm listening for the music under the lyrics. The lyrics are the content of what they're saying, the words that they're saying. And the music is, what is the underlying struggle that they're trying to talk to me about? Am I really listening to something beyond their words? And if you give them the space and you stop talking, they will fill in the silence with something so that they can hear themselves better and you can hear them better. And it will create this really connecting experience for the two of you that will be so much more helpful than any advice you could give the other person. Just being able to connect on that deeper level.
Yeah. And the last thing that was really a huge theme in the questions that I received is this increasing fear about moving back into normal life and what that will even be like, and people really expressing a lot of fear around that. And so how can we take care of our mental health while this transition starts to happen?
I think that we get really anxious when it comes to uncertainty. And so I think that there's a lot of uncertainty that lies ahead. And one thing that we're learning right now is, how do we manage that anxiety when we have uncertainty? And one of the things that I think is really apparent is that we never really had a lot of certainty. I think we had this illusion of control, and that helped us. It kind of soothed us through things, but we really don't. And when you kind of go into uncertainty, you see that there's a lot of opportunity to really stretch yourself. And maybe the plot twist ends up being something that is really positive in your life that never would have happened otherwise. So I would say embrace the plot twists that come up. And in terms of the anxiety around just the health aspect of, what does it mean to go out into the world? I think as long as you are saying to yourself, here's what I'm going to do to keep myself safe. And beyond that, I don't have a lot of control. There's so much freedom in saying, I have control over certain things, and these are the measures I'm going to take, and this is what feels right for me, and that might be different from what feels right to another person. So you have to decide for yourself what feels right, because it's not really clear, sort of what we need to be doing. You can read up on it and say, this is what feels good to me, and know that you're going to adjust, because every day it's kind of different. And then beyond that, you say, and then I'm going to let go. I'm going to do everything I can that feels right to me. And then at a certain point, it's beyond all of our control. Even if I do every single thing that I'm supposed to do, it still might be beyond my control. And you let go at that point, because there's no point in sitting there again. And this obsessive rumination is what gets people into a really dark place. And it doesn't help you stay safe in any way. It's not productive.
To end this, I would love to know, what is one of your favorite ways for getting present in the moment?
Yeah. I mean, there's some exercises that I find really helpful. And one of them is that sometimes when people are really spinning out, there's like a circus going on in their minds, and we've all been there. I think if you can ground your body first. So if you can just sit in a chair and get quiet and feel your feet on the ground and say to yourself, okay, I feel my feet on the ground. Here I am in the present right now. I am safe. And then you move up your body. Oh, and those are my knees. And I can feel my knees, like knock your knees together. I can feel them. And you move all the way up, and you're taking breaths, and it just centers you. And then you can go back to what you're doing, but it just brings you back to the moment. I think another thing is, please laugh during this time. I think people are just taking themselves so seriously because they feel like they have to be vigilant every moment of the day. And again, if you're doing what you need to be doing, you're following the guidelines, there's a whole other dimension of life that is also going on that is just as real. And so, yes, you can laugh with a friend. Yes, you can obsess about a TV show. Yes, you can, talk about a guy or a girl or whatever. You can, like your normal life, like you're still you. You haven't lost you. And so much of what makes us human feels like it has been stripped away from us. And yet so much of what makes us human is still there and within our control. And we shouldn't voluntarily give that up.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. It was so wonderful talking with you.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
So that is going to be it for today. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted their questions and to everyone who has spent their time here today. I want to reiterate that while Lori Gottlieb is a mental health expert, her advice in this video does not constitute therapy or an evaluation. And I also want to encourage you, if you are able to donate, to please donate to the Loveland Foundation's Therapy Fund for Black girls and women. I will have that link down below. The content discussed in this video regarding mental health is for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for individualized professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of a qualified mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your condition. If you're thinking about suicide, are worried about a friend or loved one, or would like emotional support, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 to speak with a trained professional at a crisis center in your area. If you are located outside the United States and in crisis, call your local emergency line. In the description below, there is a link to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, along with a resource from BetterHelp that has international hotlines in case you're watching this from another country, as well as hotlines for specific issues. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk soon.